Ever catch yourself, kind of daydreaming about the future? Like, what will the world actually be like in, say, 2050?
Yeah,
Will we have those flying cars everyone always talks about?
right. Or robot butlers.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving deep into one vision of that future, taking a look at Divyan Gupta's book, 2050, A Vision of Tomorrow's World.
Oh, I've heard of that one. He's a futurist,
He
right?
is. Basically helps us peek into the future a little bit using like trends and data to imagine, all the different ways things could go.
And it's not really about like predicting the future perfectly, right? It's
Cool.
more about, I think, just exploring the possibilities, kind of like,
Possibility.
yeah, like
Yeah.
holding up a prism to what's happening now and just seeing all the different ways the light could, refract.
I like that. Okay, so let's unpack some of what Gupta sees in store for us. And we've got to start with, well, us. He paints this picture of a world with 9.7 billion people by 2050.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, it is.
But here's where it gets interesting. That growth, not exactly spread out evenly across the globe.
Oh, really? So where is it, like, concentrated?
Picture Africa. Gupta says they're expected to see a huge population boom. And not just that, a surge of young people entering the workforce.
Interesting.
So you could see that a couple of ways. On one hand, you've got all this energy, all this potential for innovation and economic growth. He even calls it a demographic dividend.
A dividend. That sounds pretty positive.
It does, right?
Ah.
But like with most things, I'm guessing there's another side to this too.
There always is, isn't there?
Right. What's the flip side here?
Well, this youth bulge, as they call it, it also presents a real challenge because if all those young people, if they don't have access to education, to good job opportunities.
Right. They need a way to build a life for themselves.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
can easily lead to frustration, even potentially instability. So, the future of Africa, and honestly, the world, depends a lot on how we navigate this, how we support these developing nations.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, it takes a village. We can't just sit back and watch this unfold from a distance.
Exactly. We're all connected.
We are. And speaking of connections, Gupta throws us another curveball. He says over 68% of us will be living in these megacities by 2050.
Mega cities.
Yeah, think like Tokyo, but on a scale we can barely even imagine.
That's a little hard to wrap my head around. I mean, it's kind of exciting, but also a little overwhelming.
Totally. So walk me through it. What would it actually look like to live in one of these massive futuristic cities? Would it be like living in a sci-fi movie?
Well, in a way, yeah. Imagine these sprawling urban landscapes, but they're powered by smart technology, by design. You're talking about buildings that, like, anticipate your needs, adjust the temperature automatically,
Oh, wow.
transportation systems that flow seamlessly, you wouldn't have to deal with any traffic, and resources like water and energy managed super efficiently.
Sign me up for a self-driving flying taxi any day. Okay, but on a more serious note, how realistic is all of this?
Well, the technology's there, or at least it's getting there pretty quickly. The bigger question is, I think, accessibility. Like, will this be something everyone benefits from, or will it just, create a new digital divide?
That's the big question, isn't it? Will everyone get to enjoy these futuristic cities? Or will it just be the wealthy few who have access to all the cool technology?
Exactly. And will it actually bring people together, or will it just create even more isolation? These are things to think about. It's not enough to just have the technology. We need to use it in a way that actually benefits society as a whole.
It makes you wonder, in this world dominated by like data and screens, what will it even mean to be connected in 2050? But hey, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's maybe switch gears a bit and talk about another big force shaping our future: technology.
Okay, yeah.
And Gupta definitely doesn't hold back in this area, especially when it comes to AI and robotics.
Oh, yeah. I was reading that chapter earlier, and it's pretty mind-blowing. We're not just talking about, like, robots assembling cars anymore.
No, what else is going on?
This is about AI, like, really working its way into every single aspect of our lives, from the mundane stuff to the really big life choices.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What's the big impact AI is going to have?
Well, imagine a world where AI isn't just a tool, it's like a partner, a collaborator.
Okay.
So you have AI algorithms helping doctors diagnose diseases, but with incredible accuracy.
Oh, wow.
Or even like personalizing your medical treatments based on your unique genetic makeup.
Personalized medicine. That sounds incredible. So no more one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. What if that same technology, right, the same power, is then used to decide who gets approved for a loan. Oh, wow.
Who gets hired for a job? Or even, bigger decisions like who gets parole.
Okay, now we're not just talking about convenience anymore.
Right.
We're talking about power. Who has the power to control these algorithms? And what happens when they make mistakes? Because, no technology is perfect.
It's a huge question, and honestly, one I'm not sure we have the answer to just yet. And it's not even just about technical glitches,
Yeah.
It's about the biases that are often unintentionally baked into these systems just by the people who design them.
That's scary to think about.
It is. It is, because if we're not super careful about all of this, we could end up creating a future where these algorithms actually end up reinforcing the inequalities that already exist instead of helping us, overcome them.
It's like we're handing over the reins of our lives to these algorithms.
Yeah.
Hoping for the best, but not really knowing where we're going to end up.
Hoping they'll steer us in the right direction. But who's responsible when they take a wrong turn? It's a real ethical dilemma.
It's like we're handing over the reins to these algorithms and just saying, take us to a better future. But are we even sure what that looks like? And who's responsible if we take a few detours along the way?
It's a really good question. And I think it speaks to a bigger point that Gupta makes, which is that as we move further into this world of AI, the lines between, our choices, human choices, and the decisions made by algorithms, those lines get really blurry.
Right, like is it even our choice anymore if an algorithm is basically nudging us or even outright deciding for us?
Exactly. And that's why we have to be having these conversations right now, about transparency, accountability, about ethics in AI. How do we make sure these powerful technologies are being used responsibly? That's the big question.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, with great power
comes great responsibility.
Exactly. Except this time, it's not superheroes we're talking about. It's algorithms.
Right. And speaking of powerful technologies, Gupta also spends quite a bit of time on biotechnology.
Okay, here we go. This is where things get really futuristic, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up, because this is where science fiction starts to feel very, very real.
Hit me with it. What kind of biotech are we talking about?
Okay, so imagine a world where, with personalized medicine, we go way beyond just tailoring treatments.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine a future where we can actually use gene editing to target diseases, maybe even eliminate some inherited diseases completely, before they even develop.
Wait, hold on. Eliminate diseases
Yeah.
at their source. That sounds incredible, but I can also see where this is going.
Right. It's a bit of a Pandora's box, isn't it?
It feels like it. So it's not just about curing diseases anymore. It's about actually enhancing human capabilities.
Yeah.
Are we talking designer babies here? Is that what Gupta's suggesting?
Well, he brings up a lot of interesting points around this, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, we can eliminate a debilitating disease.
Right.
But what about using gene editing to choose eye color or height or intelligence?
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
It really is. I mean, the implications are huge. Are we going to see a world where wealthy people can basically buy genetic advantages for their kids?
Which, of course, just widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Exactly. And these are the questions we really have to grapple with, the ethical considerations alongside the scientific advancements. We can't just ignore that part.
We can't just get caught up in the excitement of oh, cool, new technology, without thinking about the consequences. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not just a conversation for scientists either. This needs to be a societal dialogue. We have to figure out, what are the ethical frameworks? What are the regulations we need in place? How do we make sure these technologies are being used responsibly and equitably?
Because the future isn't just about what we can do, it's about what we should do.
Exactly.
100%. And speaking of what's out there, Gupta doesn't just focus on Earth in his book. He also takes us on a little trip to a place we've always dreamed about. Space.
Space. Yes, it's such a classic human fascination, isn't it?
Totally. And forget about just landing on Mars, planting a flag and coming home.
Oh, this is way beyond that.
Gupta talks about a future where commercial space travel is just a normal thing, space-based industries, maybe even space tourism.
Space tourism? Are you serious?
Hey, it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. He talks about booking a trip to the moon for the weekend.
Wow. So instead of just looking up at the stars, we're going to be up there experiencing them firsthand.
That's the idea. I'd be first in line, honestly. But let's be real for a second. With all this talk about space travel and incredible technology, it's easy to forget about the very real problems we've got right here on Earth.
That's true, and Gupta addresses that too.
Okay, good. So let's talk about the big one, climate change. What does Gupta have to say about that?
Yeah, he definitely doesn't shy away from it. In fact, he calls it, and I quote, the defining challenge of our time.
Which it is.
Yeah, totally. And he says we need to tackle it on two fronts. So we need mitigation, right? And adaptation.
Okay, break those down for me. Mitigation and adaptation.
Okay, so mitigation is all about reducing our impact on the planet, right? It's transitioning to renewable energy sources, reducing our emissions, living more sustainably.
So basically, hitting the brakes on climate change as hard as we can before it's too late.
Exactly. But even if we slam on the brakes right this second, the climate is already changing, and we're already seeing the effects of that. And that's where adaptation comes in. We have to figure out how we're going to live with those changes, how we build resilient infrastructure.
So it's like we're steering a ship through a storm. We need to adjust our course to, avoid the worst of it, but we also need to be prepared for some rough waters.
That's a great analogy. And just like navigating a storm at sea, dealing with climate change, it requires everyone working together.
It's not just about, individual choices at this point, right? This feels like a massive collective effort. Do you think we're up to the challenge?
It's a big one, for sure. But Gupta seems to think so. At least he's cautiously optimistic. He really believes we have the capacity to come together, especially when we're dealing with something as big and scary as climate change.
Okay, I'm curious. What makes him think we can pull this off? I mean, we don't exactly have the best track record when it comes to, global cooperation, do we?
True, but I think there's a growing awareness, especially with, younger generations, that these aren't just local problems.
Yeah. Climate change doesn't care where you live or what passport you hold.
Exactly. And he sees potential in things like, transnational movements, groups working together across borders, more technological collaboration.
Or diplomacy, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Diplomacy. We've got to be able to talk to each other, find common ground. He thinks that's where the hope lies.
So it's like this realization that we're all in the same boat, like it or not. It might be a bit of a wake-up call, but maybe that's what we need.
Maybe that's exactly what we need. Because when we get that, when we truly understand that these challenges are interconnected, that's when we can start to think beyond just ourselves, beyond our own little corner of the world.
It's both daunting and inspiring, isn't it? This idea that the future really is in our hands.
It really is.
So Gupta's thrown a lot at us, the good, the bad, the totally mind-blowing. What's the takeaway here? What are we supposed to do with all of this?
I don't think he gives a simple, 5-step plan, and honestly, that's probably a good thing. Because the future isn't about following some predetermined script.
Right.
It's about making choices, constantly making choices.
So where do those choices lead? What are those, big areas we should be focusing on?
Well, he emphasizes 3 things. First, embrace innovation, but responsibly. We talked about AI, biotech, space exploration. Those are powerful tools, but we have to think about the ethical side, the consequences. Are we using these technologies to actually make the world better?
Right, for everyone,
Yeah.
not just a select few. Okay, so responsible innovation's number 1. What else is on the list for, future-proofing humanity?
Education. Never stop learning. We have to equip people with the skills they'll need in a world that's changing faster than ever before.
Yeah, the robots are coming for our jobs, right? So what skills are we talking about? What do people need to be learning?
It's not even just about specific jobs anymore. It's more about, ways of thinking. Critical thinking, problem solving, being able to adapt to new situations, digital literacy, of course. Those are going to be essential.
So basically, never stop learning, never stop growing. Makes sense to me. But in a world that's getting more complex, more tech-driven by the day, where does empathy fit into all of this? Do we still need that?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, that's Gupta's 3rd point, cultivating empathy. Because the world might be more connected in some ways, but it's also incredibly diverse.
So we need to understand each other, even if we don't always agree.
Exactly. Understanding different perspectives, different cultures, different ways of life. That's how we build bridges, how we work together to solve these huge global challenges.
So we need both the hard skills, the tech skills, and the soft skills, those human skills,
Yeah.
to really navigate whatever the future throws at us.
Exactly. It's not an either-or situation. We need both. Because the future isn't some, abstract thing, it's about people. The choices we make, the connections we build, and the values we hold on to.
He leaves us with a lot to think about, that's for sure. It's a call to action, isn't it? To imagine a better future and then actually go out there and build it.
It is, and it starts with that one crucial question. What kind of world do we want to see in 2050?
And that, my friends, is a question worth asking. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future. Until next time, keep those imaginations running wild.